Hello and welcome to the 105. I'm Cooper Petagna, that's 24/7 Sports Director of Scouting Andrew Ivins. And Drew, I'm fired up for this Wednesday. We are back to our roots, preps to pros. You remember those days? We got the portal popping. We'll talk a little bit about that, some of the more intriguing names in there right now. We'll talk about the transaction wire, what's going on, high school recruiting as we inch forward towards signing day. And then the 105 Stock Exchange, Drew. I'm happy about this one as we kind of riff-raff on this morning. A couple names we'll get to talk about as we got a new Top 247 update coming next Wednesday. So stick around for that. We'll get to talk about some guys maybe moving up in the rankings potentially. But Drew, I don't know if you've heard Super League potentially coming 2031. I mean, we just can't go like a couple months without some new idea trying to revolutionize college football. But that's what it is. Project Rudy. Have you heard anything about this at all?
Well, I read Dennis Dodd's report on CBSSports.com, and that followed the report from Yahoo Sports. Cooper, you said it, preps to pros. Yeah, we are going back to our roots because this Super League, to me, 70 teams? We're going to have private equity in here. It's feeling a lot like the NFL, Coop, and it says they're going to eliminate games against Group of Five competition and no games against G5 opponents. They're going to expand the playoff. You'd get some automatic bids in there. Feels like we're going to have the AFC, we're going to have the NFC, we'll have wild card divisions, and we'll have essentially a Super Bowl. So yes, to me, this feels like the NFL. I wrote down some things here. Are we going to get preseason games, right? Like you can't just jump into a conference schedule, 12 games. I think we're going to get some preseason action a little bit. And, like player fines. Think about it, Cooper. How's the recruiting going to work now that private equity is going to be involved a little bit? I think the entire recruiting process, and we've been hinting at this for a while now, it's going to be completely flipped upside down. There isn't going to be official visits, all right? They're going to be like those NFL 30-player team visits you have before the NFL draft. So certainly interesting. I think there's another one out there, the Super League. Yeah, you said Project Rudy, two different groups trying to get this together. I think this is where we're headed. Like that's my vision. And I think the other note here, Cooper, is it wouldn't go into effect until 2031. All these major media deals need to finish, and then something else would be born. It'd be interesting to see how they get to the 70 schools, though. Like who's in, who's out. And I haven't seen anything about like promotion relegation either.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept as well. I think what this has to do with, if obviously you haven't figured it out by now, but you talked about the media rights expiring in 2031. That's where you could revisit this type of concept. The groundwork would have to be laid upon right now. You talked about private equity. I thought this quote from somebody involved in this situation behind the scenes was pretty telling. College football is by a long margin the second most valuable sport in the United States of America. It's sort of under-marketed, under-distributed, and under-monetized. So this all comes down to dollars and cents, in case you weren't aware. But Drew, that is true, but it doesn't make me necessarily love the idea or gravitate towards that. What makes college football so great, in my opinion, is getting to see what we've been able to see over the last couple of weeks in some of the upsets. And you and I talking about Brian Vincent and Louisiana Monroe and what they've been able to do. There's so many examples of that you could go on and on. David versus Goliath, that happens every single week. Those Group of Five teams, there are 67 Power Four teams right now. So what happens to those Group of Five programs? What happens to an Ashton Jeanty out of Boise State? And I think the easy answer for a lot of people out there would say, well, he would go find another place to play, and especially one that would have the media rights deal of 70 programs. But Drew, I don't know how I feel about it. Typically, when this news kind of trickles down, it takes me some time to really kind of wrap my head around it. But it's a fascinating idea. I don't think we're really going to have a pulse on whether or not this really kind of has legs, maybe until 2 or 3 years from now.
Yeah, and to spin it towards, the 105, what we talk about, I think the personnel positions are going to be that much more important. Roster management, do we get practice squads? Is that the 85 scholarships going to the 105s? And if there is, this Super League or the Project Rudy, does the Group of Five football become a true farm system where an Ashton Jeanty becomes a coveted free agent, and some of those other guys that have made the move up to contender? So certainly something to keep an eye on. And I'm sure we're only going to hear more about it in the coming years.
Earlier, you hit me on Slack and you said, "Hey, do we want to talk about NIL leaving college football?" And I was like, "What is he talking about?" It's not NIL, but very similar, 3 letters in
Can
the
I
same
say it?
letters that we're gonna talk about. NLI, you said NLI. I got it wrong, and in case you haven't heard, bye-bye national letter of intent. That's what we're saying. Multiple reports on Wednesday that the NCAA Division I Council is moving to eliminate the national letter of intent, which dates back to the 1960s. I had my cousin reach out to me. He is a high-level casual fan and say, "What does this mean?" Drew, it really doesn't mean anything. It's non-news. I think back to my day when I was a director of player personnel at Washington at Oregon. There was so much trouble that came with the national letter of intent. It's really kind of an outdated document, and it had more to do with a binding contract being the financial aid agreement. I think what's happening here with the revenue share upon us next year in college football, I think the NCAA is looking for a more solid form of documentation. That's why they're getting away from the national letter of intent at the end of the day.
Coop, I'm not going to push back here, right? I don't think much has changed at all. I made some phone calls this morning, not to high level fans, but high level ranking officials at some college football playoff contenders. And I said, does this change anything? And they said, nothing. With that being said, I do want to kind of put this out there in the sphere, right? So the national letter of intent's gone, and now they're more than likely, it seems like the consensus is these prospective student athletes will sign financial aid agreements, scholarship agreements. This sets up a little bit better with the looming revenue share, right? It's going to be more of a contract for these individuals. The one concern I've heard is there needs to be some type of deadline that this paperwork is signed. Right now, there isn't a deadline, or there needs to be a signing period window, much like the NIL or NLI. I'm going to keep getting that confused there, Cooper. And really, I think it's opening up the possibility where some of these high profile recruitments, let's take a Jeremiah Smith, for example. Remember, committed to Ohio State for a year, gets to the early signing period, and there was a lot of negotiations at the 11th hour. Those negotiations, if he doesn't have to sign in a certain date in December, they could spill into January. And Cooper, you also have to think expanded college football playoff, right? The signing period right now is before the conference championship games. I think all the coaching changes, the coaching carousel, it's not going to spin until after Christmas. If you are, let's say, a Glenn Schumann, for example, at Georgia, and you get tabbed to be the next head coach at a North Carolina, I'm just using 2 schools here. Well, you're going to stay and ride it out to see if you're going to win a national title. I think all those coaching changes are going to be much later. And what I'm saying is a guy like Jeremiah Smith, it might come down to when he actually steps foot on a college campus. And this is what's going on in the transfer portal, right? When you see these transfer portal commitments, nothing is binding until those student athletes actually start classes. Cam Ward, Miami's quarterback, a lot of back and forth. There was some uncertainty about whether or not he would show up. And look at Miami. It put Miami in a tough spot. I mean, if they didn't have Cam Ward, are they 6-0 right now? Do they have one of the top offenses in all of college football? So something to keep an eye on. I think for 99% of these recruitments, not much changes, but for the 1%, the true difference makers, they're going to have some leverage. It's going to be like potentially that All-American Bowl years and years ago when Najee Harris, was he going to get on the plane and go to Michigan, or was he going to go to Alabama? And I know I'm rambling here, Cooper. The other thing, I think if we go to these financial aid agreements, schools are going to push even harder to get their recruits to go and participate in bowl practices. You're going to want to lock those guys in as soon as you can and prevent other schools from kind of tampering and poaching, because you'll at least have them for 1 year.
You read into this a lot more than I did. I went to my cousin. You went to some high-level sources in college football. We dealt with this. One example that we had, Ali Cajo. I don't know if you remember him. He actually signed with the University of Washington but never enrolled. Enrolled at University of Alabama. Shout out Tosh Lupoy being able to get that one done. Now with UCLA. So those were all kind of, I guess you would say, loopholes with the NCAA. I think they're going to have to tighten those things up. We have some comments asking about the fax machines. What happens to the fax machines? Let me let you in on a little secret. The fax machines have not been operated in quite some time. We didn't use fax machines when I was at it a couple years ago. So those are dead and gone. Rest in peace. But guys, just a reminder: 24/7 Sports is the place to be. Everything that you need, wall to wall team coverage, recruiting rankings, not only in high school but the transfer portal as well. And we'll get to talk about that here in a second. Everything you need here at 24/7 Sports. Make sure to like, subscribe to 24/7 Sports YouTube channel, but also make sure to subscribe to 247sports.com. And Drew, it is that time. It's August 9th, or excuse me, October 9th, and it's the first time really where we're talking about the transfer portal. I'm excited about it because it's a little bit of a new lens for me. You really get to kind of ride shotgun here and kind of see me and Clint Brewster go through this. But I'm excited. We're starting to see these names kind of filter in the transfer portal right now as you're seeing more players redshirt, opt out of their season. And Drew, I think we're a little less than 30 names already in the transfer portal. And what I wanted to do today was play a little bit of analyst and kind of highlight some of these names, if that's okay. And you'll play host. And then you ask inquisitive questions, put me on the spot, and I'll see what I can do to kind of explain who I like the most so far.
I have experience like actually steering a podcast for my previous endeavors, right? At 24/7 Sports. I can play host if I need to. I also do think we need to bring up, you are as involved as ever when it comes to the transfer portal rankings, right? Me and you, you more than me. I'm kind of on the high school side. You're going full in on the transfer portal. You've been watching these guys, and I've read the write-ups in Next Gen. Certainly a lot of names, and it seems like more guys are entering. Am I wrong on that? More guys are kind of redshirting. I think it's kind of a situation where some kids see that others are doing it, and they're like, "Oh, I can do that as well." Coop, the one name that jumps out right away, Alabama defensive lineman Jemea Otis in the portal. John Talty of 24/7 Sports reporting, keep an eye on Ole Miss and Mississippi State. Ole Miss is obviously where Pete Golding, former Alabama defensive play caller, is. He was Otis's primary recruiter. Where does this guy rank? What do you think about his potential, and why is he leaving Alabama?
He would be number one in the portal right now, but I mean, there's less than 30 players in it, right? I mean, it was kind of like last year. Who was the guy that was number one in the portal? I think he was one of the first names to jump in. He was from
Raymond
Texas. That's right. I remember people being like, "Oh, is this guy the number one player in the portal?" All right, Jemea Otis is legit. We liked him coming out of the state of Mississippi, signed with Alabama. He was a big old war daddy, 6'5", 325 pounds. And when you dig into him a little bit, you're kind of wondering, all right, did he get phased out under Kane Womack and the new defensive scheme? Not really, Drew. And Clint Brewster kind of brought this up. They kind of played him the same way that they played him the year before. Now, obviously, he's fighting for snaps. I think limited snaps between Wisconsin and Georgia, only had 25, but the majority of his snaps coming at the 3 technique. He can also play the 1. They utilize him as a 5 tech as well. But the way that this guy moves for 325 pounds is pretty graceful, and he's got graceful strength as well. He utilizes his length. He can eat up double teams, and it's one of the reasons why I think he's going to be one of the names that, even when the dust settles here a couple months from now, is going to be one of the more prioritized guys in the portal, because defensive linemen, especially interior big bodies, they are precious. They are very difficult to come by. Now, here's the thing. You read into it, and it sounds like he's been dealing with a knee injury. He was a heavier set guy. I think he was north of 350 pounds in high school. This is something that's been lingering a little bit. It kind of has my antennas up. I think this guy, when right, is a day 2 NFL draft pick. I think you consider everything else, he's probably a day 3 guy. That being said, if you're a college program looking for somebody to give you his best football over the next 2 years, he's going to be one of those guys that, quite honestly, is going to demand one of those high price tags. So I'm a big fan of Jemea Otis. I think his best football is ahead of him. He's started 13 games. He's played 30 as well. The tread is pretty light. I'm excited about him. Big fan of his. We'll see. But, it still goes back to like the old adage, like they're in the portal for a reason, right? So I think initially you're like, oh, why is this guy on the market? You read into it a little bit, get to understand the other side of the story.
Coop, you want to talk about an NFL model. You bring up the knee injury. have to give schools an opportunity to do some type of medical evaluation. And normally, I don't know how many people know how it works. These transfers do come in on visits, and they usually try to get them around doctors and at least screen them as best they can. But I've heard so many, I don't want to call them horror stories, but a school will bring in a transfer in the spring, and then all of a sudden that individual needs to have surgery, and it's detrimental to the depth of the program, right? You just used a counter, you used a number there. Certainly them shrinking that transfer portal window, I think it's making it only harder for colleges. Another guy that entered, Notre Dame cornerback Jaden Mickey. I think a lot of people will be like, all right, this guy's leaving Notre Dame. But hey, it's not easy to get on the field there, especially in the secondary for the Fighting Irish. Sounds like you think potential ready to play guy at the Power 4 level?
Yeah, I think so. He started 3 games. That's a good secondary. Obviously, you got guys like Benjamin Morrison, Christian Gray, Morrison, the All-American. And this kid, he started 3 games. He's played in 28. He's got over 580 plus snaps. He was a sub 11-1 guy coming out. He's quicker than he is fast. And it kind of lends to the point that I think this guy is going to be a nickel. I think that's where you maximize him. Now, he has the ability to play outside. I really like that versatility. I think he could play safety if you really needed him to. But Drew, he's got some sticky match coverage ability, kind of playing in the slot. I like his ability in the short to intermediate. So, I don't know if Marcus Freeman, Al Golden has really saw him there. He's had some snaps in the inside of the nickel corner. Maybe he's looking for an expanded role. That would be my guess. I think he's got some good football ahead of him. We have him ranked as an 87 in the transfer portal rankings. That would be a low tier priority free agent in the NFL. This is one of those guys. If you're looking for a value add, you're one of those Power 4 teams, you're a top 40 team in the country, I think you could go out, get a starter in Jaden Mickey. I kind of like this guy a lot.
Coop, this name fires me up. Creed Whitmore, wide receiver at Mississippi State. 15 touches over the past 2 seasons for the Bulldogs. He scored 4 touchdowns, right? I think 2 receiving, 2 rushing, kind of used him on the jet sweeps. Kid I'm super familiar with. He was in the Sunshine State. I'll never forget in the regional finals, his senior year, he played quarterback for Buchholz. He threw 3 touchdowns. He ran 2 touchdowns, and he had 3 interceptions on defense. It was a difficult evaluation because there was not a lot of wide receiver tape. I remember seeing him inside the swamp at Florida's Friday Night Lights. He was running routes next to Evan Stewart. Jeremiah Smith was a freshman at the time. What do you think the market's going to be for a guy like Creed?
He's a case study, right? It's my first year doing the transfer portal and the rankings, so I am kind of fascinated in Creed Whitmore, who was a top 247 guy for us. He played obviously as a freshman and as a sophomore, but environment is everything. We talk about this a lot with quarterbacks. What about a receiver, right? You talk about a guy that's had 2 different offensive coordinator in 2 years, obviously a coaching change. Jeff Lebby comes in. The quarterback play really hasn't been steady. Blake Shapen's hurt. Michael Van Buren's in, even though I think he made the decision to redshirt before Shapen got hurt. This is a guy with a lot of ball left to play. And you mentioned it, Drew, in spurts. He was pretty good when he got the ball in his hands. That's when I think he was the most effective. So I'm excited about him. I think he's going to be a high volume number 3. I think he could emerge as a number 2, but I think this is a guy that can play high level Power 4 football. Somebody's going to have to be in the position to say, you know what? We have a vision in mind for him that we think he can kind of grow into. I think timeline, peak performance, probably 2 years from now. But this is a dude that's ready to play. He's already shown that he can play. And we loved just kind of the competitive temperament coming out of high school, right? He played quarterback, as you mentioned. He played safety as well. We didn't know whether he was going to be offense or defense. He can give you some value on special teams. It's one of those guys bouncing in the portal, Drew. Like if we're going from 85 to 105, and I'm looking at a very good value proposition here, Creed Whitmore is one of those guys that can give me value at multiple spots, especially on special teams as well. That would be one of those guys that I would be looking to try to find a way to squeeze on my team if it all worked out.
He's got ties to UCF. Older brother played there. Dad played there in state. We will see. NC State edge rusher Red Hibler. I think Creed might be my favorite name in the portal, but Red Hibler would be right behind him. He enters difficult season there in Raleigh for the Wolfpack, a guy that's played a lot of football in the ACC. I would imagine he's already on the recruiting boards for scouting departments around the country.
When you watch these guys, you have like the impulse of watching the tape, and you have like the emotional draw of like it's early in the portal, so you're still trying to navigate what the market's going to look like. I like Red Hibler. I had to step away from the tape, come back a day later, make sure I was seeing the same thing. We put an 87 on him in the transfer rating, and this is a guy we considered going a little bit higher, but drew 6.5 sacks in 13 games played last year at NC State. It's a guy that can do a lot of different things. He's playing off the edge, but he can really play inside. I like the versatility. I think he is a high floor pass rusher, can also play the run. I like the motor as well. Super versatile kid. I think he's going to be one of those guys that you potentially take on top 25, top 40 team. You take him as a depth piece, but could crack his way into the starting lineup. I think continuity is going to be important for him. I think he's got a shot to be a Sunday player as well. Really, really impressed with Red Hibler. That would be one of those guys in the market right now that I would circle and obviously want to keep an eye on.
Quarterbacks are certainly going to drive the conversation. I think there's only one in there so far, UNLV's Matthews Luca. I've heard a few names that, hey, keep an eye on. The signal caller could enter. I'm sure you've heard some names. I'm sure there's a lot of schools in the direct messages or going through agents of quarterbacks out there. But Saluka's the one that was in the media for the name, image, likeness at UNLV. Sounds like you think he could potentially play at a Power 4 program in 2025.
Yeah, I do. At UNLV and Brennan Marion and Barry Odom, you got to give him a ton of credit with Matthew Sluka and the job that they did. This is a guy, when you look at him on paper, only completed 43% of his passing attempts, but he's so much more than that. And, I kind of compared him a little bit to DJ Uiagalelei. I also compared him to Brennan Armstrong. You probably have some people listening to that and saying, ooh, gross. I don't want anything to do with that. But he is a big functional athlete, 6'3", 225 pounds, Drew. And I like the way that you can utilize him outside of the pocket. He's really a gamer. He went for over 1,200 yards twice in his career at Holy Cross at the FCS level. So the athleticism is there. And this is a guy that beat Houston, that beat Kansas as a starter at UNLV. I think in the right environment, he can excel. We might have went a little bit too high on him. I don't think we're too far off, but I think Sluka is going to be a guy that some teams are going to be willing to say, all right, does he kind of fit what we want to do offensively? And if he does, you've seen a very limited but successful sample size at UNLV that you can win with this guy at the Power 4 level.
You think Michigan wishes they had Matthews Luca right now?
Maybe. I think it would be a better option than what they have. But it will be interesting to see what type of team is going to say, you know what, we'll invest with this kid or give him the shot to come compete for the starting job. He's got some goods. It's kind of like, how do you fine tune it and put him in the best spot? Because we've seen guys with a similar skill set that have transferred and not really gone on to be what we thought they were going to be, right? And I talked about DJU. I talked about Brennan Armstrong. Both those guys transferred. DJU had some success at Oregon State, has not had any at FSU. Brennan Armstrong had a lot of expectations coming over from UVA to NC State. That didn't translate, right? So you wonder how this is kind of going to look with Matthew Sluka.
Well, depth. I mean, some schools took multiple quarterbacks last year. There could be a market for that as well. All right, two more names in here real quick. Xavier Townsend, UCF, wide receiver, running back, return man, and then Caleb Brown coming from Iowa, former Ohio State transfer. Anything of note with those two?
I know you like Townsend. That's the reason I want to put him on here. And this guy is he's interesting. And I'm really loving the portal, studying these guys, because you're starting to see like, all right, yeah, these guys aren't really a fit for everybody. But if you envision them the right way, you can see them being successful. We talked about Brashard Smith, Drew, a guy that was a former highly touted receiver from Miami, transfers to SMU, now playing running back, having success there with the Mustangs. Xavier Townsend's one of those guys. Most of his production comes as run after catch, and a guy that's utilized really kind of in a jet motion type of game, and a guy that you're trying to get him touches at or behind the line of scrimmage. And I think you have to have the right mind to kind of maximize his skill set. Doesn't have the long speed, doesn't have the home run capability, but this is a guy that, you want to find a way to get the ball 4 or 5 touches a game. Caleb Brown is interesting because he's a former top 247 guy, went to Iowa, didn't pan out. Drew, I thought there were times where I viewed him out of high school and I thought, this guy's more of a running back than he is a receiver. You watch him in college, And that's true. It still rings out. He struggles to create separation. The best thing that he does is when they get the ball in his hands and they kind of let him go north-south. He's a one-cut runner. He's a physical kid. If I was looking at Caleb Brown, I was one of these group of 5 teams, and I think that's kind of where he's going to live. I would say, Caleb Brown, we're happy to have you, but if you want to extend your career and have a potential of people look at you different this point going forward, you're playing running back, and that's what I would do. And I think the portal gives teams leverage to say it hasn't worked out for you yet. We have a different vision for you. Come here, we might as well try it. Maybe we can add something to your repertoire that we haven't seen yet.
Is anyone else talking about like the wide receiver to running back transformation that's taken football by storm? I feel like 105 guys has been on top of that. You said Brashard Smith. You had Tyron Tracy out of Purdue. He was making some plays this past weekend in the NFL. Brashard Smith, like you noted. I think that is in Justice Haynes or Jamari Haynes there at Georgia Tech. Like I think with the perimeter runs, teams wanting to run counter, you want guys that can get to the perimeter, right? One cut and get upfield. I think that's certainly something to keep an eye on.
Beautiful hosting chops, by the way, Drew. You did phenomenal. I know I was the one kind of driving the bus there, but great complimentary role. Hey, I know you got hosting ability. Trust me, I know that. I haven't listened to it, but I'm going to go back after we get done with the show. Hey, guys, if I haven't mentioned the 105, you can find us every Monday and Monday on CBS Sports Network, 2 o'clock Eastern time, Wednesday right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel, typically 1 o'clock Eastern time, not today. Had some scheduling conflicts. But if you want to find us on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel, you can do that. Make sure to like and subscribe. Also, if you have a question, make sure to drop it in the chat. And then you can find us on the airwaves wherever you find your podcasts as well. Important for the airwaves crowd out there. Make sure to leave a review. We love that. Leave a review. And also leave a rating as well. We appreciate you guys listening as always. Now back to our roots, the transaction wire. I'm excited about this. We got Canes Cats 305 in the chat. Loyal listener, you're going to like this one because I don't feel like we have talked Miami. We talked Cam Ward. We talked Mario Cristobal. But Miami, Drew, people want to know, like, all right, where are they going to finish when it's all said and done? Mario Cristobal, Canes, they're 6-0. They flipped Josh Moore from Florida, the number 46 receiver in the country. They did that on Tuesday night. You still got guys like 5-star DJ Pickett out there. You still got guys like Florida commit Vernell Brown out there. Still got guys like Ben Hanks, who's also committed to the Gators. Drew, I feel, I call Mario Cristobal the Grinch right around signing day because he just steals everybody's gifts, and that's what he does. I mean, I kind of feel like the Grinch is putting his strategy together, kind of foaming at the mouth a little bit, and it's starting to get that time. If you got presents around the tree, lock them up.
I would agree, and that's why this is on the rundown. I mean, Josh Moore, we can get into him, the player, here in a second. But Miami 6-0, they are in the national headlines. You have everyone doing the Cam Ward celebration. You see them right now sitting number 12 in the rankings. Cooper, I mean, Miami, if you had to bet, I would assume you think it's going to be a top 10 recruiting class. I think the Hurricanes are evaluating senior seasons, that recruiting department around the country, and they're getting ready to make moves because they're going to use this on-field momentum, and they're going to use that guy you see on the screen right there, Mario Cristobal. I mean, he eats, sleeps, breathes recruiting. So Josh Moore is the first. We'll talk about him, the player, 6'4", 205 pounds. He's got a 6'9" wingspan. That's one of the top ones when it comes to all the pass catchers in the 2025 cycle. He was our alpha dog of the UA Miami camp. Younger, Cooper won't turn 18 until April. Kind of a lumbering target, no speed markers on him, but I think in contested catch situations, he's excellent. And, what has me really bullish on Josh Moore, there's a clip out there where he catches a touchdown pass, Cooper, and he does a back handspring flip once he reaches the end zone. You're going to see it right here on your TV screen. Like, I haven't seen that out of him. I thought that was super encouraging, kind of one of those freaky plays for him. In 6 games this season, 32 catches, 510 yards, 5 touchdowns. I think when you think about Miami, that Shannon Dawson offense, I don't know if he's got the juice that Isaiah Horton does, but he kind of reminds me, Coop, I'm going to throw this name out here, like Kelvin Benjamin, who was also out of South Florida, ended up at Florida State. I think that's what you're hoping with Josh Moore, big perimeter target.
Yeah, I think a big X, right? They had Colby Young there a year ago before he transferred to Georgia. I think this guy, these are the type of guys that you want to win on, right? Type of guys that you want to develop. Ultimately, at the end of the day, big receiver, a lot of athleticism, guy that we've been tracking throughout his senior season that we are really, really excited about. Drew, what about the rest of these guys? Any one between Pickett, Vernell Brown, Ben Hanks, where you're like, you know what? If they were able to get that one done, that flip, that would be really intriguing to kind of how I view Miami.
I think the one that I have circled isn't one of those three. It's the top uncommitted player right now, Elijah Griffin, defensive lineman out of Georgia. From what I've heard, Miami, Jason Taylor, the people in that department have sunk their teeth in on him. I think it's going to go to the wire. All of us are assuming Elijah Griffin to Georgia, but do not count on Miami. That's the recruitment I'm keeping an eye on. I mean, yeah, Vernell Brown, Ben Hanks, they'd be nice. They are legacies at Florida. We still don't know what's going to happen there in Gainesville, but it seems like both of those individuals are kind of keeping an eye on it. And I think if there were to be a head coaching change, if Billy were to leave, they're going to give whoever steps in just as much of a chance to recruit them. Now, I think they would be big additions, especially Ben Hanks. Really like what he has done. Big, long, reactionary corner. I think he's got 4 or 5 pick sixes here in the past 15 games. That's certainly notable when you're playing down in South Florida.
Elijah Griffin probably playing the best ball of any defensive lineman in the country right now. Certainly a name Miami fans want to keep an eye on. There you have it. Miami surging right now. Team to watch always down the stretch as signing day approaches. All right, Drew, let's talk about a young man that calls his name Thanos, or his nickname is Thanos, Jakeem Stewart. One of the best players in 2026. He is now reclassified to 2025 to snap his fingers, and his junior and senior seasons disappear, which make him very difficult to evaluate when you're projecting him to the next level. From New Orleans, Louisiana, was at St. Aug, transferred to Edna Carr so he could enroll early at the next level. He's got OVs to home state LSU in November, Oregon as well, USC, and Ohio State. Down to those 4 is what it looks like. Drew, we have never doubted the talent of Jakeem Stewart. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Mason Smith if you're trying to envision him out there, quick twitch, explosive, long, checks every box that you could possibly imagine. The recruitment, though, it's been a little bit of a circus, right? It's kind of Bear Alexander-esque if you had to compare it to one, which is not the greatest thing that you want to hear. That being said, a lot of physical clay. That's why you got the best of the best recruiting this kid. Where are you at just in terms of, one, the reclassification, two, I mean, we've seen this guy. Obviously, he is a giant force, and he has everything that you could possibly want. But he's going to 2 years without high school football. I mean, that's a big deal and a lot of reps missing, and something that you're going to have to account for at the next level.
Coop, you said he's losing his junior and senior seasons. He hardly played as a freshman, and Thanos is a guy we have seen dominate pretty much every camp that he has attended. Same as the FBU freshman All-American game. He was my alpha dog like 2 years ago. I mean, they couldn't block him in that setting. I think the concern with these reclassifications, and got to give a tip of the cap to Gabe Brooks on our scouting team. He wrote about it on Monday on 247sports.com, just kind of talking about prospects that have decided to jump a year and how things have panned out. It seems like, the no-brainer 5-stars have had success, Cooper, Sony Styles, Quinn Ewers, the guys that are ready. A lot of other non-success stories there. LT Overton, I think, is the guy we can kind of compare LT Overton and Stewart the most. LT Overton, I went back and I looked, Cooper, he played 50 games of high school football. He got reps as an 8th grader. He had, 114 tackles for loss, 97 quarterback hurries, and 54 sacks. With Jakeem Stewart, we're working off one season, what he did last year, because he's not playing here in his now senior season. I think that's a bit concerning. We keep saying it, developmental. You have to get those game reps. And LT Overton, he played right away as a freshman. I think he kind of regressed year 2. Now we're seeing him crank it back up at Alabama, right? Leading the team in pressures there, but certainly not ideal. I think, when he reclassified, a lot of people surprised where we slotted him. Hey, our job is to get the rankings right. When we talk about Jakeem Stewart, got to compare him to what all his now peers are doing, right? All these seniors, we have more data points on, we have more film on them, we've had more exposure to them. With Jakeem Stewart, it's just a big question. I think it even says a lot, Cooper, that we stuck him in the second round. Is he worthy of the second round? We're kind of still betting on the traits right here to kind of all come together. With that being said, hopefully get him at the Under Armour All-America game. I think that's going to be so important for him. Ryan Williams last year, that's where he kind of showcased, hey, I'm one of these guys. And, my advice to all these recruits from classifying, I know you turn on the TV, you see Ryan Williams doing it at 17 years old. You think, hey, I can do it. Ryan Williams scored every 4 times he touched the football across 39 games in Alabama's highest classification. He is the exception to the exception.
Right. He is a unicorn in the truest sense of what you just explained there. So it is going to be interesting. You're seeing more reclasses. And I don't know, Drew, this one, it's a big roll of the dice. If we were to put him in the top 32, I could get on board because the physical talent is abundant. Us in the second round, it's a little bit more of a conservative shot here, conservative play, obviously, without 2 years of context. We'll see what happens with Jakeem Stewart. The high school recruiting train rolls on. We got more notable commitments. Usman Kroma, number 165 in the top 247, number 7 running back. I mean, what a big, freaky kid this is. He commits to Georgia. Drew, your thoughts here? This kid, originally, when I saw him like 2 years ago, I was like, all right, this kid's definitely a linebacker. That is not the case. He's going to be playing running back. Him going to that strength conditioning program in Athens, I'm eager to see what this is going to look like in a couple of years.
Man, it seemed like at one point he was trending to Auburn, then it was Florida State, and then Saturday, kind of in the middle of the college football slate, it's like, boom, he's committed to Georgia. I think it flew a bit under the radar, Coop. First word I use on my scouting report, thrashing. He's a thrashing running back, downhill tendencies, plays with a ton of urgency, right? How he hits the hole. Not maybe the fastest guy out there, but he holsters a nasty stiff arm, and he will full speed hurdle defenders. I think he's done that twice this season. What I really like about Usman, 3-down capabilities. He's almost had 1,000 receiving yards over his prep career there. I think Georgia is getting a good one in what he's able to do. Also a really unique build. You mentioned it. We saw him a few years ago at the Future 50, 6'2", a ton of length in the arms, kind of built a little bit different. I think he's going to play at 225 pounds. Story here, Georgia just reloading at a position where they continue to find talent. They continue every year bringing in these running backs. Usman Kroma is going to have plenty of success running behind that great wall there in Athens.
National recruiting analyst Tom Loy is in the chat answering your questions. So if you have any recruiting questions, that is the place to be. He also tells me the pronunciation is Usmani Kroma. Usmani Kroma. Apologize. Thanks for the you couldn't give us the tip 10 minutes before, Tom.
I've been watching, the hurricane coming to Florida. I've been watching these like live weather streams, and I've been shredding the guys hosting them because they cannot pronounce any of the towns in Florida that, were in former Indian name. And now I'm out here just butchering top 247 running backs, Usman.
You're not great with Louisiana parishes either.
Okay.
It happens. Florida's tough.
Yeah.
Give me, what is it? Osceola?
Apopka? I mean, those are easy ones.
Oh, those are layups. Yeah. But yeah, Florida's not the easiest sometimes. I've run into trouble there. All right, back on track. Malik Clark, top 247 receiver. We got him stashed in the back end in the top 247. He commits to South Carolina. Drew, you kind of love this dude. He's a big old freak as well.
Yeah, I don't know if we have split opinions here. This dude, I think, has everything to bake into a true wide receiver one. And you look at South Carolina's offense, they need some of that there in Columbia. Cooper. Another one, he is younger for the grade, came in at 6'2 and a half, 188 pounds, 4.39 in the 40 at the Under Armour camp there in the Carolinas this spring, 4.31 in the short shuttle, 34.1 inch vertical jump, 122-inch broad jump. You just saw him right there taking some screens, getting across the field and finding the end zone. Cooper, the most impressive clip I saw, go route, laid out, catches the football right in the front of the end zone. I love this kid. Kind of reminds me of Nick Marsh from last cycle. Similar wide receivers. We've seen Nick Marsh put it together, get on the field early, for Michigan State. I think this is a huge pickup. It was a big loss for Florida State, them losing Malik Clark. And name to know in South Carolina, certainly Malik Clark.
He falls under that senior season reevaluation bucket where I think there's some teams probably doing their due diligence where, once again, South Carolina is probably going to have to fight off some oncoming teams with Malik Clark. You mentioned it, big body, runs well, explosive after the catch. Certainly a stock-up guy. If Shane Beamer can hold on to him, that's going to provide big dividends for the Gamecocks. One other note of worth, if I can put it that way. Mario Nash from Mississippi, his Mario Nash Sr., typically on the chat here, not today. Decommits from Mississippi State. Drew, we have him as the number 14 interior offensive lineman in the country. Florida State, Ole Miss, LSU, all sniffing around. It seems like Florida State would be the most likely landing spot, according to our Tom Lloyd, talking with him yesterday. So we'll see what happens with Mario Nash, and hopefully Mario Nash Sr. will jump on here a little bit later. Any thoughts on that?
Well, you think he's a center, right? You think he's one of the top, all the way, right?
All the way. I do.
Guess who's struggling to snap the ball? The Florida State Seminoles. I mean, they have a lot of issues. That is one of them. Could be a needy addition for them if they can get that done.
All right, guys, I mentioned it earlier in the show, but right now is the time to check out 247sports.com. Wall-to-wall team coverage, recruiting rankings, high school transfer portal alike. That is the place to go. Make sure to subscribe. We appreciate your support at 247sports.com. All right, Drew, now it's time for the 105 Stock Exchange, stock market, as we like to call it. We used to do this at Preps to Pros, and I really liked this. And this was kind of like when all the GameStop stuff was happening, and, people were like, everybody was on Robinhood and investing in Dogecoin and all that type of stuff. That's kind of what's happened here with the 105 Stock Exchange. So let me break it down. We have 3 stocks that we're going to get into. We have the blue chip stock, which the way that we've set this up, you can only select a player from the 2nd to 4th round of where we see that player. You cannot choose a 5-star. And this is a guy that I explained to you, like confidence meter over 8 out of 10. You feel like this guy's going to be a dude at the next level. We also have the wild card stock. That's a day 3, 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, 7th round guy that's pretty much boom or bust. That's the best way to put it. And then we have the penny stock. The penny stock, no disrespect to anybody, but if you're in day 3, it's kind of like, you know what? Nobody's talking about this guy. I'll put some money down and I'll make some more money in the future as well. But Drew, let's start with the blue chip stock, and I'll give you the tee box with your first 2 picks here. Who do you like with your blue chip stock?
Well, Coop, we've been watching a ton of tape, right, the past few weeks. We're trying to watch more tape here before the rankings come out next week. I'm going with LSU running back Harlem Berry. Having watched all of the blue chip running backs, all the guys at the top of the board, I think he is clear-cut number 1. And you think about LSU, that offense, they're going to pair him with Bryce Underwood and Caden Durham, who is having a ton of success as a true freshman. Coop, he reminds me of Shade McCoy. He's explosive, 4.37 in the 40-yard dash, but how he's able to string cuts together without having to gear down, naturally low center of gravity. I think he has been awesome this season. This is a guy that's been a little bit in the 5-star conversation. I think he's someone that can get on the field there early. He's going to create some highlight reel plays in a Tigers uniform. And again, pairing him with Caden Durham, who is another elusive running back at that 2nd level. I'm all in on the next Shade McCoy, Harlem Berry.
You know why I'm in on Harlem Berry? Because my mom was his first grade teacher. That's what's up. Holy name of Jesus, man. Elementary school. Shout out. He's at St. Martin's playing a very low level of competition there in New Orleans, Louisiana. But he's a dude. I mean, we saw him at Future 50 2 years ago. You mentioned the 4.37 that he peeled off. Also, a very impressive track and field resume as well. Love that pick. One of the best running backs in the country. Now, I want you to stick your chest out on this one because I know you love this guy. Hayden Low, USC, your 2nd blue chip stock. Talk to me nice, Drew.
I'm all in on Hayden Low. Like you said, I think when we look at the edge rusher class nationally, Hayden Low put on the senior tape, what he's doing out there in California. Love this guy. 30 tackles, 5 sacks, 6 quarterback hurries. You're going to see him sumo plex a quarterback here. This guy is a menace off the edge. We list him as the defensive lineman. We are moving him over to edge. 6'5", 245 pounds, 81.5-inch wingspan. Cooper, he can bend while attack, and he finishes with authority, like I just said. Owns gap closing bursts. And I think what also stands out when you kind of go play by play is that motor, his ability to flush out pockets. He is a high effort individual committed to USC right now. Greg Biggins of 24/7 Sports, I believe he's reporting, Oregon sniffing around, Miami sniffing around. He's a name we're going to be talking about a lot here as we approach signing day.
It's funny. He plays in a even front. He's a 5 technique. He's got that big old elbow, kind of Rob Gronkowski, Kayvon Thibodeau band, whatever you would want to call it. And Kayvon Thibodeau's the name. He played at the same high school coming out of California there.
Yeah,
And and they're similar. I don't want to get carried away. Thibodeau was obviously an All-American top 5 pick, but there's a little bit of stiffness, but there is so much explosion that they play with, the speed to power. You can see the similarities there. Hayden Low, definitely a guy stock up right now. Love those 2 picks. All right, Drew, for me, how about cornerback Cade Phillips at LSU? This is a guy that we like a lot, a member of Andrew Ivins' freak list as well. And you might ask, why is he on Drew's freaks list? Well, he ran 21.5 in the 200 meter. He was also 24.4 in the long jump, which is just absolutely insane. He's got 2-way snaps. He's got 3 INTs through 4 games played this season. Drew, he is a silky, smooth mover. He is athletic. He checks boxes. But I'll tell you this, man, the football instincts and man-to-man coverage, he is sticky. But I like him playing downhill too, and he's a really good open field tackler. This kid is a ball player. I'm all about Cade Phillips.
Big fan as well, Cooper. And I think his wide receiver tape is kind of exciting as well. I'm not campaigning for Cade Phillips to play offense, but he has made some grabs here as a senior where it's like, whoa, all right, I haven't even seen some of our top 2, 4, 7 wide receivers come down with a grab like that. You said he's smooth. I think he's still got a ways to go, and that is a good thing, right? I think once he gets in there with Corey Raymond, they polish him up. There's more to unlock. It is the year of the long corner, right? I mean, think about all these guys. Dijon Lee headed to Alabama. Obviously, you have Devin Sanchez headed to Ohio State. If you're looking for a height, weight, speed, long perimeter player, this is the cycle to find them. Cade Phillips, like that one a lot, Cooper.
The more we study Brian Kelly's class here at LSU, the more we're like, oh, these guys are a lot better than we thought they were. Cade Phillips, Harlan Berry, you go down the list. All these guys have an elite senior seasons, not to mention the guy at the top of the board in Bryce Underwood as well. All right, my next pick, Drew, Nick Townson, tight end, Texas. I wish he wasn't playing tight end. I wish he was an edge. I wish he was an off-ball backer. I don't care. I love the kid. This is a guy that I'm so confident in. He plays wildcat quarterback. He lines up at running back. He lines up at receiver. Like I said, you can rush him off the edge. You can use him as an off-ball linebacker. He ran 10.92 at a reported 220 pounds. This dude can roll. On top of that, he is a football player. I think some people probably think about Jatavian Sanders when he came out of Denton Ryan. He was a 2-way guy playing at a really high level. The way this guy plays, Drew, he is a proactive football player. And football player is how you would describe Nick Townson. The cool part about that is he's an elite level athlete. So you attach all those type of traits to a kid like Townson. I get super excited about him. I can understand why Sarkisian and gang want him on offense. He is a dynamic guy with the ball in his hands. There's a couple times where he catches the ball in the deep third and he's able to create separation from opposing defensive backs at that size. That is incredibly impressive. Love this kid. Love Nick Townson. Can't get enough.
And Sark is just like, you can pair him with Michael Terry. The other thought that comes to mind, the Lone Star State just loaded up with these like jumbo skill players. You also got Keody Armstrong headed to Texas A&M. I think these H-back move tight ends are only going to be more and more in. We're seeing it on Sundays, more NFL teams trying to run out of 2 tight end sets, right? Load that box, pass out of it as well. I like that one as well, Cooper.
All right, there you have it for our blue chip stocks. A little LSU flavor, little USC, little Texas. No surprises there. Now time for our wild card stock. Just a reminder, 4th round, day 3, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. This is kind of where those guys live, Drew. I'll let you have the honors here. And you know what? I almost penalize you because this is dangerously close to a blue chip stock.
Yeah, well, I'm cheating here, and I don't really care. We need to get this out on the airwaves. Arizona wide receiver commit Terry Shelton. I think this guy is the next T-Mac.
Dog.
He is awesome. Another large wide receiver, over 6'4", three-sport athlete. His senior tape is one of the best watches I have seen out there. Ball skills, his ability to attack, leverage, 25 catches, 537 yards, 8 touchdowns through 6 games. He's got a big web, Cooper. He's evasive after he hauls in the prize, which is a bit surprising, kind of given his long limbs. T-Mac is off to the NFL after this season. I think Terry Shelton is the guy that's going to step in right away and be another wide receiver one. He has that juice. I'm a big fan of him. I know you like him. He's really good. 50-50 contested catches. Headed to Arizona, right? So a lot of people are probably like, whoa, Arizona. Well, they got a good one in T-Mac. They got another good one coming here in Terry Shelton. And they also have some other receivers committed that we like as well. Isaiah Mizell there in Orlando, right in my backyard. Really good receiver class for Arizona.
I think if you're an Arizona fan, you're just praying to God that Steve Sarkisian or anybody from the Texas recruiting staff does not listen or watch the 105 because they're aware of Terry Shelton. We know that. But Terry Shelton, what he's put on tape as a senior, I think we liked him. I think he was more in that Wildcat category. Now he's shifting his way into, all right, this guy might be a pretty sure thing at the next level. Love that pick. This pick I know you're going to love. Camario Taylor. Right, it's not all bad for Mississippi State. The quarterback in the top 247 from Mississippi, committed to the Bulldogs. Camario has been one of the more polarizing evaluations throughout this entire process. I started conservative with him in my region. I think we started around at 88. We saw him at lead 11 out there in LA. I don't know if we moved him up, but obviously somewhere across the way, we put him in the top 247. Drew, the arm talent is there. There is no ands, ifs, or buts when it comes to what type of physical capability Camario Taylor possesses. It is the consistency and what the development and the trajectory looks like. And Camario is one of those guys, I think we talked about it recently, but on day 3 on the 7-on-7 portion out in LA, where you really just go out and you play football and you're not thinking and you're not going through all these drills that a lot of these guys have been coached up their entire life. That is not Camario Taylor. It's where Camario Taylor played his best ball, Drew. He's 3-2 right now. He's coming off a 190-yard rushing game. He threw for 160 as well. He's going to take a little time. He's going to be a slower burn. I'm okay with that. There are some things that he does. I'm going to say it and reserve judgment here, but the way that he moves and the way that he plays, he's an unorthodox guy. He likes to play off schedule. Some Cam Ward stuff there, right? And remember, Cam Ward started his career at Incarnate Word and went to Wazoo and is now this polished product that is now at Miami because he's played a lot of football. I don't know what Camario Taylor's path looks like, but wow, is he a really exciting player that just makes you kind of scratching your head a little bit when you're done watching him and just wondering, like, if this dude ever puts it together, the sky is the limit.
Coop, you said he's, really good off platform, off schedule. I think when I watch his early on senior stuff, what stood out to me is like, okay, this guy is playing in a structured environment. I didn't know he had the capability to take a 3-5 step drop and throw the football to where it needs to be. I thought that shined because we know he's a good athlete. You said it, over 500 rushing yards for the season. I mean, he is a guy that was on the freaks list. You see him at Anthony Richardson. He's this big, muscled up individual. To me, that's where he is really taking a step forward. I think the other thing, 57 completion percentage here as a senior. I think if you're scouting the box score, you're like, that's not high. The game tape to me tells a different story. Like, he is not playing with elite wide receivers. There's a lot of catches where it's hitting guys in the hands. Like, I'm not too concerned about that number, having actually dug into the tapes. To me, Cooper, committed to Mississippi State right now. When that coaching carousel spins, new coaches in new places, he is one where it's like, all right, who's going to take a swing at Camario Taylor?
I'm going to have to get a fact check because we got Tom's comment pulled up here on the screen and says, Camario Taylor is Cam Ward. There it is from Cooper Petagna. That is not what I said. And I think we know that. If you're listening out there on the airwaves, that is not what I said. Need a quick fact check there. All right, now time for the penny stock, Drew. I don't know about you. Every time this comes to mind, I think about like Jordan Belfort, Wolf of Wall Street. He's walking in there and he's got to sell penny stocks. This one, I love this category because this is someone deeply buried kind of in round 6 or round 7 where you're like, yeah, we put him in there, but we don't really know. Dylan Robinson, for me, committed to Washington out there in California, ran 10.9. He popped a 4.49 as well. I watched his workout over the spring at Under Armour LA. The kid is raw. I don't know whether or not he's going to be a corner or safety, whether or not he's going to be a receiver. I think he's the most natural on offense, but this is a big joker at over 6'3", who's going to play over 200 pounds that can roll, and he is a dynamic kid. I'm super excited about Jed Fish, what they're building over there, Drew. You can make a pretty good argument they should be undefeated. He came in with high expectations. He wanted the highest ranked recruiting class in Washington history. As a guy that worked at Washington, as a guy that helped Washington achieve the highest ranked recruiting class in program history, I hope he does it, and I think he's trending that way, and I think he will do it. Guys like Dylan Robinson are going to help Washington get over the edge. I love this kid. Super intrigued with this kid.
Cool. I'm glad you want them to top your recruiting class. What was it last year? 6 top 100 draft picks for Washington. I got that number right. 6 on that.
Something light.
Something light. Okay. My penny stock, I'm going to go with another quarterback here. Ty Hawkins, SMU commit. Cooper, I don't know where he's going to finish in the rankings for us, right? We are trying to project towards Sundays. Ty Hawkins is not the biggest individual, but man, what he has done at IMG Academy here this season, both with his arm and his legs. He came into his senior year after leaving the state of Texas, having rushed for close to 2,000 yards. He's already got 236 on the ground. I just love his ability to run the RPOs, and where he has really improved is as a passer. He finished his junior season, Cooper, the last game as an 11th grader. He threw 6 interceptions in one half of football. I've asked Ty Hawkins about this. I'm like, how did this happen? And he's like, he doesn't really have an answer, but he has kind of shut me up here through the first half of the year. IMG Academies, their schedule's kind of all messed up with the recent hurricanes. He's completed 66.2% of his passes, 766 yards. More importantly, Cooper, 9 touchdowns, 0 INTs. SMU has a dude right now in Kevin Jennings at quarterback. He can throw it around the yard. He can run as well. Just wait for Ty Hawkins there. Reminds me of his future position coach, De'Aaron King, who is on staff there.
I thought about Rhett Lashley, and I thought about, like, hey, if North Carolina opened up, or hey, one of these jobs opened up, maybe in a Power 4. If I'm Rhett Lashley, I'm not really, outside of the jobs that are just abundantly clear where you're going to take a step up in the food chain. There is no reason to leave SMU, especially with the money that they're throwing around from an NIL standpoint. Those people want to win, and he's in a really good spot. And you look at all these teams that struggled in the Big 12 last year. That has not been the case with SMU and the ACC coming off a really nice win against Louisville. SMU, man, I mean, I think we said it, right? Like if you were looking at Baylor, Dave Aranda, Texas Tech, Joey McGuire, Sonny Dykes at TCU, SMU outside of Texas and Texas A&M, like who's going to be the best recruiting program over the next 5 years? In that third spot, I think you'd have to put your money on SMU. Is that fair?
I mean, that's a great point. And I think that what also stands out about them is they do kind of recruit not just locally, right? What we've seen them in California, they'll hand out offers in Florida. I mean, they do emphasize that Dallas metro and the surrounding areas, but they are recruiting like they are a national brand.
All right, guys, great show today. Drew, we appreciate you jumping on, and that reminds us that our thoughts and prayers from Andrew and I and everybody here at the 24/7 Sports family are out there for everybody in the path of Hurricane Milton in South and Central Florida. Please stay safe over the next couple days, and just want to let you guys know that we're thinking of you, and we look forward to getting back to our regular scheduled programming next Wednesday. We will be off the air on Monday, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week. Have a great rest of your week. And just a reminder, the 105, you can find us every Monday and Wednesday, CBS Sports Network, 24/7 Sports YouTube channel, and wherever you find your podcast. For Andrew Ivins, I'm Cooper Petagna. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you next time.